What's good, everybody? Take it easy back here. I'm going to do something a little different for the first time on this channel. I'm going to be on the Blue Boon podcast on Thursday doing a all-in preview and a Kobe World Festival preview. So I'm going to kind of give it a test run here, do something a little different. I'm going to talk about all-in without necessarily giving predictions or anything. Try to hit different topics than I'll hit on Thursday, but I might repeat myself. I don't know how the conversation is going to go. And then for the Kobe World Festival, I'll just give predictions. I'll give more of a preview on Thursday. So let's start with all in. I'm going to go from the bottom up on this card, talk about kind of the matches I'm not satisfied with, and then get into the good stuff at the end here. So I think the lowest match on the totem pole here is the TNT title, Adam Cole taking on Kyle Fletcher. The booking to get here is pretty pedestrian, I think. It's basically just a series of tag matches of Papagon taking on the Don Callis family in different variations, the whole lead up. It kind of feels like it's a promised title run for Adam Cole here. He's done nothing to note with the belt. He hasn't even had like a good pay-per-view match since returning from injury. He kind of bombed against MJF and Daniel Garcia. But I think it was a promised title run. I think if it wasn't, Kyle Fletcher would have just won this belt on TV and took on like Mark Briscoe or something in a more exciting match. I know Kyle's fought Mark Briscoe a lot this year, but they always deliver. There's plenty of other guys on the roster here because you would have plenty of choices too, because the next match I don't think I would have booked. So if I were booking this, Kyle Fletcher would be going into All In as champion, taking on someone more exciting, whether that's Bandito and Takeshita are both fighting for the ROH World title. So you could probably rule them out, but you could have Hologram have his first title match. You could do Briscoe, like I said, something like that. And Adam Cole, I would book as the Papagon trio, challenging for the trios titles. So that match is not official as of today, Monday, going into All In, but they alluded to the Ops taking on Death Riders for the trios titles at All In. That seems pretty uninspired too. A lot of people, including myself, have floated out the idea of doing a Stadium Stampede match for the trios titles, and putting like 3, 4, 5, 6 trios in there. So I think what could have been better is you do the Ops Death Riders, throw in Papagon, throw in Don Callis family. You could throw in a conglomeration team. You could throw in the Patriarchy. I think they're fine in the tag title scene. I'm blanking on some other trios, but AEW's got a couple trios out. They just formed that trio with Scorpio Sky on Saturday. You could just throw all those guys into a Stadium Stampede match. I thought that would be more interesting. And the final match that I personally wouldn't have booked if I was booking this is the Men Casino Gauntlet. So if you didn't have that on the card, you would have a lot more bodies for that trios match. So let's go into the Men's Casino Gauntlet here. They decided to book both Casino Gauntlets here because I think they were forced to do the Women's Casino Gauntlet. They kind of set the expectation for all the fans that Athena would be on this card. And then Athena was never on AEW TV, so there was no way to really get her on the card except for the Women's Casino Gauntlet. I think putting the Women's Casino Gauntlet on this show was the right call, especially with your champion versus champion women's match. So I think that the issue is the Men's Casino Gauntlet, which I think is a tough sell because not only are there 2 Casino Gauntlet matches on the card, but you risk kind of spoiling the main event. I think the fans ultimately know Hangman's going to win, but because of the reign Moxley's had, there's still a little bit of like fear in the back of your mind. But if like an MJF wins this match, which I would imagine he's winning this match based on the fact that he's in it, it kind of spoils that Hangman's going to win the main event. Which again, it's not a huge spoiler, but it's also kind of takes the winds out of the sails, I think, a bit. Alright, so then this match I'm not excited for because I don't care for the Hurt people at all. But I think they've booked this match somewhat well. Nothing really exciting, but you got the 3-way tag title match. I was surprised FTR wasn't added to this. They might still get added to this to make it a 4-way. You got Hurt Syndicate defending against Jet Speed and the Patriarchy. The Patriarchy they've set up on Collision as a somewhat formidable tag team. That news report came out that there's a father and son tag team belt that's been made. So I think the Patriarchy are probably winning this. I think it's a 3-way so you can get the belt off of the Hurt Syndicate without pinning them, because God forbid Bobby Lashley does a job for anybody. It feels like you should give the win to Jet Speed because they've been geeked out week after week, but I think you kind of get stuck in the same spot that the tag belts have been in, like with Private Party and stuff, where you're putting the belt on geek guys. So I don't think the Patriarchy is necessarily inspired, but it will lead to the inevitable Edge and Christian reforming, which is a storyline we know is happening no matter what. So at least you have the tag title props involved in a major storyline, which will hopefully give them a little more life. That's not really inspiring me even saying it, but it's been a long time since those belts have mattered. You want to ultimately see them on someone that matters, but I'm not sure how you get them off the patriarchy and onto Edge and Christian. Probably means FTR winning the belts again. So maybe you do just put FTR in this match and have them win the belts. I'm not typically that high on FTR. They obviously deliver in certain matches from time to time. I think they're doing the best work they've done in AEW right now, though, so there could be worse things than putting the belt on them. We briefly touched on the Women's Casino Gauntlet match here. I think this is a good spotlight for the women. We've seen a lot of women's tag team matches, a lot of Megan Bay and a lot of Thekla. They've kind of forced a lot of the faces, which really just kind of feel like geeks. I wish they were pushing Queen Aminata more, but with her and Ty J and I can't even remember who the other faces they put on that team are. And then the women, same thing. You got the Spooky Girl, Sky Blue, Penelope Ford. Not a lot of interest there. Megan Bain's already wrestled Toni Storm, so I think all the kind of fodder they put on TV on Collision are just the bodies for this match. I think really this match can only have 3 winners, which is Willow or Statlander, which both they've bridesmaided so much in AEW. I think it would be hard to even get excited for them. They kind of always 75% feel like they're just treading water. So then the only other person left is you have Athena. And I think Athena, getting her Arlington moment, as silly as that is, I think makes sense. And then you could have Forbidden Door potentially main evented with Athena taking on Mercedes Moné. Not in a winner-take-all match, but Moné putting on one or both of the AEW titles on the line against the ROH title at Forbidden Door. So you get a little bit of the Forbidden Door flair. I've always thought Willow should be the first person to beat Moné. I don't think it's going to be Toni Storm. I don't really buy that Toni Storm needs it. I don't really love the idea of Athena doing it either, but I can't see Moné working those ROH shows, unless she might, and it'd be a big way to finally graduate Athena to AEW, back to AEW TV. She started on AEW, which is kind of crazy to remember. She was some of that Jade Cargill fodder way back when. All right, and then we got what I would deem the 4 main event matches. The tag match is probably the lowest on the totem pole, but I think if this weren't all in, this could potentially be the main event of like a Wrestle Dream or something. And then you got the team of Swerve Strickland and Will Ospreay taking on the Young Bucks. I think this is kind of your typical kind of WrestleMania stipulation match. Other shows have done it as well. I think of it as a WrestleMania trope, but you essentially have an undercard match where the stipulation is going to play into the main event, I think. So the EVPs put their EVP title on the line, Young Bucks being the EVPs, of course. And so Ospreay and Swerve's wager is that neither of them could challenge for the world title for 1 year if they lose. So I think what this is ultimately leading to is Swerve and Ospreay getting those EVP powers to help Hangman kind of even the odds in the main event. Whether that's security, whether that's banning Death Riders from the arena, whatever the heck they're going to do there. I think that's ultimately... You booked yourself into the corner a bit with the Death Riders that every match has to have House of Torture shenanigans, and that you have the title belt in this briefcase that's locked up. So you have like the kayfabe, how do you even get the briefcase open even if Hangman wins? So I think your kind of get out of jail free card is making Will Ospreay the EVP. This match should rock. I have no doubts that this match will be great. Young Bucks have never won it all in. I don't expect that to change here, but they should deliver pretty big strides here. So next up, you have the unification match. What I think is ultimately going to be 2/3 of the AEW Triple Crown title. You got Okada versus Omega 5. First one outside of Japan here in the United States. Everyone kind of expects Omega to win this here. So Omega, if I remember the records right, I think Omega is up 2-1-1. So 1 draw. So it feels like Okada should win it. So then they're all evened up. So then you have potential 6 match down the line if you ever want to do that. I also think with Kenny kind of in the later stages of his career, I think he's past being the ace. I'm not sure that he can really even deliver as an ace anymore. Some people claim he can. I haven't been as high on his American stuff. I love the Gabe Kidd match to start the year. He's worked a lot of multi-mans and stuff. This is one of the few singles matches he's worked this year. And they just brought Kota Ibushi back. I don't think you really want to trust Ibushi as a singles wrestler either. So I think it makes a lot of sense to just reform the Golden Lovers and kind of protect both of them that way. Maybe that's just wishful thinking because I'd like the tag division to matter. And so if you have 2 mega stars back in the tag division like that, it would ramp those belts up. It seems like something Edge would want to do because Edge is going to have his match against FTR and against the Bucks. And I can see Edge and Christian wanting to face the Golden Lovers as well. So I think that might be the team to beat Edge and Christian for the tag titles, assuming Edge and Christian win them, which I imagine is going to happen somewhere down the line. So then Okada will be the unified champion, go into the C2 again. And that's where things get interesting, because you need a third belt there. Could it be the ROH heavyweight title held by Takeshita or Bandito? Could it be maybe Takeshita wins the G1 and it's the IWGP title? And then that is not necessarily an AEW belt. It would be a new version of the IWGP belt. You kind of get to the same spot, because then the TNT title becomes way more important, because there's only 2 singles belts instead of 4. Or maybe it is just the TNT belt. I originally had thought my fantasy booking was you put the TNT title in the C2 along with the unified title and make that the Triple Crown. And then Mercedes will win the next match that we're talking about to unify the women's titles, and that clears room to introduce these rumored women's tag titles, which I think is a terrible idea, but I think if the only way women's tag titles could work is if they're the second title. You know, if you're not in the world title match, the only other way to get a title is to do a tag team. Because once it's 3rd, 4th, 5th down the line, like it is in WWE, they're never going to matter. And we see Tony Khan, he's got 4 tag titles already, and he can't book any of them well. Between the 2 tag titles and 2 trios titles in which. So I'm not inspired by women's tag titles. So I've soured on my idea of unifying the TNT and TBS title. I still think Mercedes is going to beat Toni Storm, so we might as well move over to that match. So maybe Monet beats Storm, and then I just don't know how she would drop the TBS belt. That's where everyone gets stuck. So AEW booked their biggest women's match they can book, and timeless Toni Storm defending against Mercedes Monet. Just the women's titles on the line. Mercedes got 7 belts, so winning the women's title adds to that, gives her an 8th belt, but then she has both women's belts, which convolutes things. The women's Casino Gauntlet match is for the world title, so it'd be weird to have Mercedes win and drop the world title and keep the TBS belt. If you got some sour grapes with Jade Cargill, maybe that makes sense, and you have Mercedes just beat her record. Racer from the record books, we see that all the time in wrestling. We got another example of that in Kobe World once I finish up this card here. So I wouldn't rule that out. A lot of people are picking Toni Storm here. I get it. You know, someone gets that rub for Mercedes Monet, it might as well be her biggest star to make her a superstar is a theory. I have a hard time seeing it for some reason. So my gut is still Mercedes Monet there. Alright, and then the main event of AEW All In is Jon Moxley defending the world title against Hangman Adam Page in a Texas death match. Going all the way back to the day Jon Moxley won the belt. Everyone in the know kind of knew this is the end game here. It just a matter who it would be. Felt like Darby for a long time. People are still afraid that it's Darby. Felt like Ospreay for a while. I think they ultimately landed on the right person in Hangman Page. He feels like the main guy in AEW. Jeff called him the main character earlier in the year. I think that rings true. I think he is their biggest star. People don't seem to want to accept that for whatever reason, but I think that's the reality. I think Omega's a little past his peak. I think Ospreay is putting it together, but as great of a wrestler as Ospreay is, I just can't imagine what's different about him as the world champion versus just normal Will Ospreay. And so when you have a guy like that, I think they're more valuable in like match 5 than in the main event, because nothing really changes. So you have 2 great matches instead of 1. And then Hangman Page's biggest rival for the top spot, I think, is his kayfabe rival too, in Swerve Strickland. And then you have the old guard in Jon Moxley, who still can reach that level. The Death Riders has kind of been a flop. People weren't as high on his IWGP run either. I thought the beginning of the run was really good, and it petered out towards the end, obviously, with the Forbidden Door match being a real stinker of an exclamation point. What I'm most interested in this match, I think this match will be really good. There's a lot of shenanigans they got to work around here. So I think having that EVP stipulation in the undercard, having this be a Texas death match, I think it's AEW's way to get around all the bullshit, because they have to book the bullshit. But you still want to have a great match in the main event. You don't want to just repeat WrestleMania 40 and just have a million run-ins and that's how you end the match. So I think the Texas death match is to have all the run-ins be at the beginning, and then the EVP stipulation is to have all the Death Riders thrown out the building or something. So you have a bunch of bullshit in the first 15 minutes, and then you get like 15 minutes of an actual match after that. I think is the way this is going to play out. Sorry, Doc, Hangman's winning this match. Alright, that covers All In. I think we covered everything, including the trios titles. So then let's do a quick prediction for Kobe World Festival. Like I said earlier, I'll give a more detailed review of this card on Thursday. I might give a little synopsis on the undercard matches here because I might not cover those on Thursday. So the opening match is the three kids in Mochizuki Dojo taking on the Paragon Trios team that was the prior Dragongate champions of BB Hulk, Suzumu Yokosuka, and Kagetora. Jay was on Open the Voice Gate today, and he was talking about how he's excited for this match because it feels like a big statement. I was thinking the same thing before hearing Jay say that. Having the three kids in the opener here. So the opening match of every Dragon Gate show is free on YouTube. So this really just kind of screams to me that someone's going to get their big statement win. So these three guys, they've scored pinfalls here and there, but they haven't had a notable win yet. So something like Daiki pinning BB Hulk feels like a really big deal for those guys taking the next step. So that's what I think is going to happen. Daiki's my favorite of the three kids in Mochi Dojo. A lot of guys like Sahara. No one really seems to like Fuda. So I don't think Fuda's getting the big win here. Sahara is like the heavyweight prospect, so it wouldn't surprise me if he gets the moment, because Daiki's going to be an underdog his whole career. Alright, next up is your typical Ultimo Dragon tag match here. So this time it's an 8-man tag, so you got Ultimo and the veterans here. Shoshiaki Boy, Don Fuji, Yusuke Kanda, taking on the Kung Fu Masters of Reach Tamiyaga, Ho Lee, Ho Ho Loon, and their fourth is Monde Ryo, also known as Problem Dragon here. These Ultimo matches are all kind of one and the same here. Given that he's taking on a comedy team, Ultimo's going to get the win here. He typically gets the win. Ultimo doesn't take any bumps. So that's kind of always the story of the matches. They play into it because everyone in the crowd knows it too. So these typically have more of a comedic flair. So I think having a comedy tag team of Kung Fu Masters might make this match a little more fun than it typically is. When they pair Ultimo against other guys like at Dead or Alive, he's teaming with Paradox, taking on Gold Class. So he didn't get the win in that match, but I think he'll get the La Mystica to win in this one. So that's my prediction. Match 3 is the 5-way IRTV title match. So Kakashi is the champion from All Japan. This is All Japan belt that they're defending on Kobe World. Gaora broadcasts both All Japan and Dragongate. So there's a little bit of corporate synergy. He will defend this in a 5-way against Kai, Mochizuki, KZ, and Naruki Doi. So Takashi is mostly a comedy character, so it's hard to imagine him winning this match on this card. Kai is the only guy I can see him really pinning, because Kai is also a bit of a goofball. You have 3 former Dreamgate champions in this match, and then KZ, who is kind of your workhorse Iron Man in the company. So Takashi is the lowest on the totem pole here for sure. So even though this isn't Dragongate's belt, I can't see him winning. I really can't. So Doi is pretty much a regular in All Japan, so I think he's the favorite. He's going to be my pick. Mochizuki would be pretty cool, though. Get him on a couple All Japan shows during the summer and fall would be cool. But I'm going to go ahead and put Naruki Doi. Alright, now we're getting to the meat of the card here, so I'm going to give more of a preview on Thursday. So, the match, other than the main event I'm looking the most forward to is the no disqualification match, which is Strong Machine J versus Madoka Kikta. I always say it wrong. I wish this was higher up the card because I'm worried it's not going to get time. But Kikta's been a monster, so I think he's going to ultimately get the win here. Next up is the Bravegate title match. UT defended against Roya Tanaka. Tanaka's just been on fire since Dead or Alive. Even in Dead or Alive, he won, so I think Tanaka's winning the belt here. And then probably your match before intermission is the team of D-Courage taking on the Dream Tag team of Dragon Kid and Hiroshi Tanahashi. This one's kind of hard to call. Conventional wisdom would say Yoshioka wins here and pins Tanahashi if Tanahashi is willing to do that, which I can't imagine he's not based on how he's booked in New Japan. But the story they're telling with Yoshioka, I'm curious if they're going to even spread it out a little longer. Dragon Kid really laid into him in the last show in a promo. Not Hug faced this D-Courage team and won. So I think D-Courage has to win. So Yoshioka pinning Tanahashi is my prediction here. Then we have the 3-way Triangle Gate tag match. You got Team Mexico, Bandito, Luis Monte, and Flamita taking on the trio of Love and Peace, Mochizuki Jr. and Jackie Kamei and Rita. and they're taking on the champions of the young brats of Z-Brats, the three babies, the three kids, the three youngsters, Ishin, Yoshiki Kato, and Hamare. It sounds like everyone's date on Team Mexico is up pretty quickly after this show, although Monte and Flamita, I believe, just booked themselves in August against Dragongate and Alpha Wolf, August 5th show. So I guess they got a couple days left, but I don't expect that team to win. Even Jay was kind of harsh on Bandito on the Open and VoiceGate podcast today, so I don't think he's really impressed. He's a lot younger than you realize, though. I think they said he's 23. Gold Class is challenging in both tag matches, so you would think they win one, but I can't see it being this trio. I think there's a lot of mileage in the Young Brats. They're my pick. The Open the Twin Gate is your co-main, semi-main. So that's the other two members of Love and Peace, Ben K and Hyo, taking on Kota and Jason Lee. I'm not necessarily excited about the team of Ben K and Hyo. Those are your two leaders of this faction, though. And Kota and Jason Lee haven't really done anything with these belts all year. So I think this is the big crowning moment for Love and Peace. I think they're taking the tag titles here. The Twin Gates. And then your main event, you have Yamato defending the Open the Dream Gate belt against Shun Skywalker, who is putting his career on the line. This one I think is a true 50-50. I kind of change my pick every day. So we're going official here on Monday. The pick might be different on Thursday. I had been leaning more Shun than Yamato. Jay on the podcast today made me think it's Yamato again. Ultimately, it comes down to, is Shun turning face, or are we kind of ending this paradox arc of Dragon Gate and moving into the Z-Brats arc? And I guess if Yamato stays champion, you can do both simultaneously. But I think it's set up pretty well that you can potentially have Z-Brats have every belt except the Brave Gate belt at the end of the show, and even Kai could have the Gaiyara TV title. That's where my mind keeps going. And that might just be too much to have Z-Brats have every belt. Then every match is a Z-Brats match. Every match basically is a Z-Brats match on this card, though. So I hinted at it all in preview with Monet that sometimes wrestling bookers can just be petty and want to base records. So Jade Cargill has that long TBS run. Maybe Monet is going to just beat it. I guess Tony Khan's not happy with the way Jade left. He's never said that. I don't really get that impression, but you can never quite rule it out. So one thing we do know was a tumultuous parting of the company was the way Sema left Dragon Gate. So Yamato, once he beat Mochizuki on June 4th, he passed Sema in on cumulative days and cumulative defenses. But he hasn't beaten Sema's record for longest reign or most defenses in a reign. And even though I think we're kind of nearing the end of Yamato's title run and Shun feels like the right guy to win it, you also got Kikta, who's on fire right now. You got this Yoshioka storyline potentially. You get more mileage out of this Yamato run. And he's close enough to breaking all of Sema's records that I think that's where I'm leaning. I'm going Yamato. All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.